When a 9-year-old deaf girl lost her father, nobody could have predicted that two of the most famous men in the world would spend months secretly training, practicing, and preparing, all because of a promise made to her years before she was old enough to understand what a promise even meant. On the night of February 3rd, 2024, Dave Grohl, the man who drummed for Nirvana and then built the Foo Fighters almost entirely by himself, sat backstage at the Kia Forum in Inglewood, California, still sweating from a sold-out concert. He picked up his phone and typed a challenge that nobody on Earth saw coming. He dared Elon Musk, rocket builder, electric car maker, and the owner of the very platform he was posting on, to face him in a charity drum-off at the Hollywood Bowl in front of 14,000 people. Elon Musk, a man with zero public reputation as a musician of any kind, replied with 4 words: "I accept. Don't cry." The internet lost its mind. Late-night shows made jokes every single night. Polls showed 91% of people believed Elon didn't stand a chance. Everyone was laughing. Everyone except one little girl. Because what nobody knew, not the fans, not the reporters, not the thousands of people already scrambling for tickets, was that this drum-off was never really about drumming. It was about a father who was gone, a promise made on an empty stage, and a secret so carefully kept that it would not come out until the very last moment of the very last solo of the night. And when it did come out, when the black curtain at the side of the Hollywood Bowl stage finally pulled back and the spotlight landed on what was behind it, 14,000 people fell completely silent. You need to watch this whole story to find out what they saw. It started with a single tweet. On the night of February 3rd, 2024, Dave Grohl sat backstage at the Kia Forum in Inglewood, California. The show was over. The crowd had gone home. But the energy of it was still living inside his body, the way electricity lives inside a wire. Buzzing, restless, looking for somewhere to go. His knuckles were swollen. His ears were ringing with the beautiful kind of noise that only 14,000 screaming people can make. He had a half-eaten granola bar in one hand and his phone in the other. And he was scrolling through nothing in particular when a thought hit him so fast and so hard that he sat up straight. He put the granola bar down. He typed, "Hey, at Elon Musk, I heard you think you can drum. Prove it. Charity drum-off. Hollywood Bowl. 1 month. I dare you." He stared at it for 3 seconds. He hit post. Within 60 seconds, the tweet had 10,000 likes. Within 10 minutes, it had 100,000. Within an hour, it was the only thing anyone on the entire internet was talking about. News anchors mentioned it on television. Radio hosts read it out loud between songs. People who had never once thought about drums in their entire lives were suddenly, urgently, deeply invested in this situation. Because Dave Grohl is not just any rock star. He is the man who sat behind the drum kit for Nirvana, one of the most important bands in the history of music. He is the same man who, after the tragic death of Nirvana's lead singer Kurt Cobain in April of 1994, walked into a garage almost completely alone and built the Foo Fighters from scratch, playing every single instrument on their very first album himself. Rolling Stone magazine had called him one of the greatest rock drummers who ever lived. His hands were not hands so much as they were instruments. His timing was not timing so much as it was gravity. Constant, perfect, and completely without mercy. And he had just challenged Elon Musk to a drum battle. Elon Musk, the man who launched rockets into orbit, the man who built electric cars that could drive themselves, the man who, at that very moment in time, owned the exact platform Dave had just posted on. Elon Musk, who had zero, absolutely zero, public reputation as a musician of any kind. The replies were immediate and merciless. People wrote things like, "Dave is going to bury him," and "This is the funniest thing that has ever happened." Memes appeared within minutes. Then came the GIFs. Then came the opinion pieces. Then, at 11:47 p.m. that same night, a reply appeared from the verified blue-checked account of Elon Musk himself. 4 words. Just 4. "I accept. Don't cry." The internet completely lost its mind. What nobody knew yet, not the fans, not the late-night hosts already writing their jokes, and not the thousands of people frantically trying to buy tickets to the Hollywood Bowl, was that this challenge was not really about drumming at all. It was about a little girl named Sophia, and a promise that had been made 8 years earlier in a quiet Houston room. But that part of the story would not come out until the very end. To understand why Dave Grohl sent that tweet, you have to go back to December of 2016. Dave was in Houston, Texas, doing a small run of acoustic charity shows for a children's hospital foundation. No band, no production crew, just him, a stool, an acoustic guitar, and whatever room they could find that was big enough to hold the people who wanted to come. That particular night, the room was a community center on the east side of Houston. The chairs were plastic. The lights were too bright. The sound system kept cutting out every 20 minutes. None of it mattered. In the front row sat a man named Raymond Castillo. Raymond was 33 years old and worked as a propulsion engineer at SpaceX's facility in Hawthorne, California. He was visiting family in Houston for the holidays and had bought 2 of the last remaining tickets almost by accident. His sister had texted him the link as a joke, knowing he was more of a classical music person than a rock person. He had bought them anyway because his daughter was with him, and his daughter loved anything that involved sound. Her name was Sophia. She was 2 years old. She sat on her father's lap in the front row, with her eyes open so wide they looked like they might fall out of her head. Her small hands kept reaching up and patting Raymond's chest, feeling for the vibration of the music, the way a person in the dark reaches for a wall. Dave noticed her almost immediately. He had been performing for 20 years by that point, and he had played stadiums and festivals and tiny clubs where the ceiling was so low he had to crouch. He knew how to read a room. And something about this little girl in the front row, the way she was listening not with her ears, but with her whole entire body, stopped something inside him that he could not name. He played the whole second half of the show looking at her. After the last song, while the small crowd was pulling on their coats and gathering their things, Raymond walked up to the edge of the small stage. He was holding Sophia against his shoulder. She had her cheek pressed to his neck, and her eyes were half closed, heavy and satisfied the way children get when something good has filled them all the way up. Raymond shook Dave's hand. "She can't hear very well," he said, nodding toward Sophia. His voice was steady and matter-of-fact, the way people talk about things they have already made their peace with. Born with severe hearing loss in both ears, has since she came into the world, but she feels everything, every single vibration. Drums are her favorite. She could feel yours from here. Dave looked at Sophia. He reached over and tapped a slow, simple rhythm on the wooden surface of the stage with 2 fingers. Sophia's eyes opened completely. She lifted her tiny hand off Raymond's shoulder and placed it flat on the stage. She held it there. She felt the beat. She felt every tap moving through the wood and into her palm and up her arm and into the middle of her small chest. And then she smiled. It was the kind of smile that does not perform itself for anyone. The kind that comes from somewhere so deep inside a person that it arrives before they even realize it is happening. That smile did something to Dave Grohl that took years to fully understand. He straightened up and looked at Raymond Castillo directly. One day, Dave said, and his voice was quieter than usual, "I want her in the front row of the biggest drum performance I ever give. Front row, best seat in the house. That's a promise." Raymond smiled, slowly, warmly, the kind of smile that a man gives when he has learned not to take good things for granted. "She'll hold you to that," he said. He carried Sophia out into the Houston night. Dave stood on the empty stage for a long time after they left, the plastic chairs all around him, the bad lighting still buzzing overhead. He had made a lot of promises in his life. Some he had kept, and some he hadn't. But this one settled into him differently. This one had weight. He did not know yet that it would take 8 years to keep it. He did not know yet that when the time came, he would not be keeping it alone. Here is what the world did not know about Elon Musk and drums. It was not nothing. When Elon was 14 years old, growing up in Pretoria, South Africa, there was a community center 2 blocks from his school that had a small practice room in the basement. The room smelled like old carpet and rubber, and the particular kind of dust that collects in places where young people come to make noise. It had a single drum kit in the corner, a battered second-hand thing with a cracked hi-hat, and a bass drum that leaned slightly to the left, like it was tired. For about 6 months, in 1985, Elon used to go there after school almost every single day, and he would drop his backpack by the door, pick up the sticks that somebody had left hanging on the snare, and play until the last bus of the evening was 20 minutes away. He was never trained. He never had a teacher. Nobody showed him anything. He just sat down and played, and figured it out the way he figured out most things in his life, by refusing to stop until something worked. He played because his brain, which ran at a speed that most people found difficult to be around, and would finally quiet down a little when his hands were moving. The rhythm gave the noise in his head somewhere to go. It was the only thing he had found at 14 years old that made the inside of his mind feel less like a highway and more like a room. He stopped when the community center closed. Life, as it always does, moved on without asking his permission. University, physics, Canada, California, Zip2, PayPal, SpaceX, Tesla. See, the companies grew, and the years stacked up, and the memory of that crooked drum kit in that dusty basement got buried so far beneath everything else that it might as well have been a dream someone else had. Until the tweet. Until 4 words typed at 11:47 p.m. that flipped a switch in him that he had not known was still connected to anything. On February 5th, 2024, 2 days after Dave's post, Elon walked into a private rehearsal studio on the outskirts of Austin, Texas. He had arranged it quietly, see through a contact, with no public announcement and no cameras. He had not touched a drum kit in more than 30 years. He stood in front of the kit in the center of the room and looked at it for a long time without moving. Long enough that the studio manager waiting in the hallway checked his watch twice. Then Elon sat down. He rolled his sleeves up. He picked up the sticks. And he played for 4 solid hours. The session had been booked for 2. His assistant, a composed and unflappable woman named Delilah Torres, sat on a bench outside the studio door for the entire extra time, listening through the wall as the rhythm in there went from stumbling to steadier, from steadier to something she could not quite find the right word for. Not good, not impressive, but alive. Genuinely, surprisingly alive. When Elon finally walked out, his hair was damp, and his collar was dark with sweat. He handed her his jacket. Cute, he said nothing about what had happened in the room. He pulled out his phone on the drive back and made a single call. The next morning, a man named Marcus Webb received an unusual message. Marcus was 51 years old and had spent his entire adult life inside music. He was a session drummer out of Nashville, Tennessee, who had played on more than 400 studio albums across every genre imaginable: country, jazz, soul, heavy metal, gospel, film scores. He had toured with artists whose names filled arenas. He had a reputation for being brutally honest in a way that beginners found frightening and professionals found invaluable. He was not famous in the way that rock stars are famous, but inside the world of drumming, his name carried the specific kind of weight that comes from having actually earned it. The message asked if he was available for an urgent and confidential coaching engagement in Austin, Texas. It did not say who the student was. DeMarcus almost said no. He had 3 sessions booked that week and a studio date in Memphis the following Monday. But something about the word urgent made him curious enough to respond. He found out who the student was 20 minutes later on a phone call that he later described as one of the more surprising conversations of his professional life. He rearranged his schedule. He drove to Austin. The first session lasted 3 hours, and Marcus spent the first 40 minutes of it convinced he had made a mistake coming. Elon could barely hold a consistent tempo. His left hand was fighting his right hand for control the way 2 people fight over a steering wheel. His fills were rushed. His instincts were there, but buried under decades of rust, and the particular problem that affects very intelligent people when they first sit down at a drum kit. They think too much, but they try to solve the rhythm instead of feeling it. Marcus had seen this before. He knew exactly what it looked like when someone was inside their head instead of inside the music. "Stop," Marcus said, halfway through a particularly tangled attempt at a basic 8-bar groove. "Put the sticks down." Elon put them down. "Close your eyes," Marcus said. Elon closed them. Marcus played a single quiet pattern on the snare. Simple, slow, patient. "Don't count it," Marcus said. "Don't analyze it, or don't solve it. Just feel where it wants to go next." A long pause. Then Elon picked up the sticks, and something shifted. It was not dramatic. It did not sound like a movie moment. But Marcus Webb, who had spent 30 years watching for exactly this, leaned forward very slightly in his chair. "There it is," he said quietly, to no one in particular. Elon trained every single day for the next 4 weeks. He trained in the early mornings before his meetings began. He trained on weekends in a studio he had quietly installed in a spare room of his Austin home. He showed no progress to the public. He posted nothing. He gave no interviews. He let the world keep laughing, and the world laughed plenty. Late-night television had the time of its life. One host performed a full bit in an Elon Musk mask, banging on a cardboard drum kit until it collapsed, while the audience howled. See, compilation videos of famous people failing at instruments went viral with Elon's name in every caption. An online poll asked people to predict the outcome of the drum-off, and 91% chose Dave Grohl. Priya Nair, sitting in her apartment in Los Angeles, watched all of it on her laptop, with Sophia curled up on the couch beside her. Sophia was 9 years old now, small for her age. With her father's serious dark eyes and her mother's particular kind of quiet that felt less like silence and more like someone listening very carefully to everything at once. She wore a hearing aid in her left ear. She could feel vibration through her palms, her feet, and the length of her spine, and she had learned over 9 years to read the world through what the world pressed against her skin. She watched the internet mock Elon Musk. She frowned. "He's going to be good," she told Priya. So Priya looked over at her. What makes you say that? Sophia thought about it for a moment in the careful way she had of thinking, like she was checking something against a private list before she answered. Because he's not doing it to win, she said. He's doing it for something. Priya looked at the screen, then back at Sophia. She did not tell Sophia yet that she was right. She did not tell her yet what that something was. Dave Grohl, for his part, was not treating any of this lightly. In people who assumed Dave was coasting on his reputation, that he had issued the challenge the way a chess grandmaster challenges a stranger at a park table, already certain of the outcome before a single piece moves, those people did not know Dave Grohl. Not really. They knew the legend. They knew the broken leg story, the one from Gothenburg, Sweden, on June 12, 2015, when he fell off the front of the stage during a Foo Fighters concert, landed badly, and fractured his fibula in front of 50,000 people. They knew that a normal human being would have stopped the show, called for a doctor, gone to the hospital, done what any reasonable person would do. Dave Grohl had a custom throne built and carried back onto the stage. He sat in it with his leg in a cast and finished the entire concert. Every single song. That is the person Elon Musk had agreed to face on the stage of the Hollywood Bowl. And Dave started preparing the morning after the tweet. He drove to his home studio in Studio City, California, a room he called his bunker, before the sun had fully come up. He sat behind his kit in the half-dark and played for 2 hours without stopping, not warming up, not rehearsing anything specific, just listening to where his hands were, the way a runner listens to their legs the morning before a race, checking what was there, checking what needed work. He played with Taylor close to his heart. Taylor Hawkins had been the Foo Fighters drummer since 1997. He had been Dave's closest friend in the world for 26 years. The kind of friend who knows what you are thinking before you say it, who finishes your sentences during sound checks, who can make you laugh when nothing else on earth possibly could. Taylor had died on March 25, 2022, in a hotel room in Bogota, Colombia. It's the night before a scheduled Foo Fighters performance at the Festival Estéreo Picnic. He was 50 years old. There were no words for what that loss had done to Dave. Some things are simply too large for words. All Dave could do with it, the only thing he had ever known how to do with something too large to carry, was play. There were days in the bunker when the drums felt like grief, pure and heavy and dark. There were days when they felt like healing, like something being slowly stitched back together from the inside. He had learned over the past 2 years to tell the difference. He had learned to walk into the room and sit down and find out which kind of day it was, and then play through it either way. He began designing a drum solo specifically for the Hollywood Bowl event. Not a performance solo, the kind built to dazzle, to show off, to make people's jaws drop at the technical difficulty of it. Something different. Something that told a story the way a piece of music can sometimes say things that a conversation never could. He called it, privately, in the small notebook he kept on the music stand above his kit, The Conversation. He wrote that title at the top of a blank page. Then he drew 3 lines beneath it, 3 movements. The first movement he wrote out in full that same week. It was loud and fast and fierce, full of force and momentum. Is the sound of 2 people in a room who both believe they are right, and neither one is ready to back down. A fight made of rhythm. He played it through once and knew immediately that it was exactly right. The second movement came to him 4 days later, at 2 in the morning, when he woke from a dream he could not remember, and walked into the bunker in his socks, and played without turning the lights on. It came out slow and sparse and aching, full of the particular kind of space that only appears in music when someone is brave enough to leave things out. It sounded like a room after someone has left it. It sounded like a voicemail you listen to after it is too late to call back. It sounded like loss. He played it once, quietly, in the dark. Then he sat still for a long time. Then he wrote it down. The third movement he left completely blank. Just a question mark on the page, sitting there in his handwriting, waiting. He did not know what the third movement was yet. He had a feeling, a musician's instinct, the kind that lives in the chest rather than the mind, that he would not know until the moment itself arrived and told him. He left the question mark and trusted it. Dave also had a condition for the event that had been agreed upon in a private phone call between him, Elon, and the small team organizing the Hollywood Bowl night. And it was non-negotiable, and it had been the first thing he said before any other detail was discussed. 100% of the ticket proceeds would go directly to a new scholarship fund for deaf and hard-of-hearing children pursuing studies in science, technology, engineering, and the arts. The fund would be named the Sophia Castillo Fund. Sophia did not know this yet. She did not know that her name was being written into documents and printed on letterheads and spoken in planning meetings in Los Angeles boardrooms. She did not know that two of the most recognizable men in the world had been making phone calls and writing checks and building something in her name for the past 8 weeks. That was the other secret. The one sitting beneath the first secret, like a second floor beneath a first. Priya Nair had driven Sophia from Houston to Los Angeles 5 days before the March 8th event, telling her only that they were going to watch something special. Sophia had packed her things with the careful, deliberate focus she brought to everything. She packed her noise-canceling headphones, which she wore around her neck the way other children wore their favorite necklace. She packed 3 books and her colored pencils. She packed her father's old notebook, the worn one with the cracked spine and the engine grease permanently pressed into the bottom corner of the cover, because she took it everywhere. She had started writing in it herself over the past year. Small observations, drawings, the occasional question that she was not yet sure who to ask. On the evening of their arrival, Priya took her to the Hollywood Bowl while it was still completely empty. The gates were open for a technical crew working inside, and Priya had arranged permission weeks in advance. They walked through the open-air amphitheater as the sun dropped behind the hills, painting everything the deep, warm gold that Los Angeles saves for its best evenings. The famous curved band shell at the far end of the bowl rose up from the stage like an enormous open hand, built to catch every sound that the stage made and throw it, clean and whole, across the 14,000 seats, rising in a gentle slope toward the hills. Sophia walked ahead of Priya without saying anything. She walked all the way down to the very front row. She put both hands flat on the surface of the stage. She held them there and felt the wood. She felt the age inside it, the history. Someone had told her that the Beatles had performed here on August 23, 1964, and again the following year, that Ella Fitzgerald had stood on this stage, that Jimi Hendrix had played here. She was still learning who all of those people were, but she understood already that they had mattered enormously, and that something of what they had given to the world had been absorbed into this wood she was touching right now, the way water is absorbed into stone. She leaned forward and pressed her ear against the stage floor. She closed her eyes. "Papa would have loved this," she said. Behind her, Priya pressed her lips together and looked up at the empty seats and the fading California sky, and did not speak for a very long time. March 8th. Her 2024 arrived the way important nights always do, quietly at first, and then all at once. The temperature in Los Angeles that evening was 61 degrees, the kind of night that feels like the city has been cleaned and polished and set out specifically for something worth remembering. The Hollywood Hills sat dark and still against the sky behind the bowl, and the stars above them were the kind of sharp and plentiful that only appear when the wind has pushed the haze away and left the air completely clear. By 5 o'clock in the afternoon, the line outside the Hollywood Bowl gates stretched down Highland Avenue and around the corner, and continued for 3 more blocks after that. By 6 o'clock, every single one of the 14,000 seats inside was filled. The aisles were packed. And every inch of standing room that fire safety would permit had a body in it. Outside the gates, thousands more people who had not been able to get tickets had gathered anyway, sitting on the hoods of parked cars, climbing the small grassy hills above the bowl's outer walls, pressing up against the chain-link fencing just to hear whatever sound made its way over the top. The crowd inside was unlike anything the Hollywood Bowl had hosted before, and the Hollywood Bowl had hosted almost everything. Its SpaceX engineers in company polo shirts sat next to teenagers in ripped band t-shirts. A row of classical musicians from the LA Philharmonic, who had performed on this very stage dozens of times between them, sat with their programs folded neatly in their laps, next to a group of college students who had driven 11 hours from Phoenix and slept in their car in the parking lot the night before. Families with young children sat beside retired music journalists who had been covering rock and roll since before Dave Grohl was born. There were reporters from 17 countries. There were 2 documentary film crews who had been granted limited access. There were people who had come because they loved Dave, people who had come because they were fascinated by Elon, and people who had come because they simply understood, on some wordless level, that this was one of those nights that gets talked about for a long time afterward. And in the very front row, in the center seat, sat a 9-year-old girl in a pale blue dress with her father's notebook on her lap and her noise-canceling headphones hanging around her neck. She had her palms pressed flat against her thighs. Her dark eyes moved slowly across the empty stage in front of her, taking everything in with the particular patience of someone who has learned that the best things arrive in their own time. She still did not know what was coming. She thought she was there to watch a concert. At exactly 8 o'clock, the stage lights cut out completely. 14,000 people became one single held breath. A single spotlight came down from the rigging above and landed on center stage. In its light stood one drum kit, gleaming, perfectly arranged, waiting with the quiet authority of something that knows it is about to be used for something important. Then a voice came through the speakers, not a polished announcer's voice, not scripted or produced or smoothed over for broadcast. Dave Grohl's actual voice, rough at the edges, warm in the middle. The voice of someone who has spent 30 years being completely honest in front of crowds and has never once found a reason to stop. Oh, welcome to the Battle of the Bowl. The crowd responded immediately, a wave of sound rolling up from the front rows to the back like a tide coming in. Dave let it settle before he continued. I have been playing drums for 37 years. I have played in front of millions of people on every continent on this earth except one, and I am still working on Antarctica. He paused just long enough. I have never been nervous before a performance. Not once. Not in 37 years. Another pause. Longer this time. I am nervous tonight. The laughter and the cheering arrived at exactly the same moment, crashing into each other the way 2 waves do when they meet. And the result was so loud that Sophia felt it move through the soles of her shoes and up through the bones of her feet. She smiled without realizing it. My opponent tonight, Dave continued, and the crowd quieted again immediately. The way crowds do when they know the important part is coming has been on this Earth for 52 years. In that time, he has sent rockets into orbit and brought them back to land themselves. He has built cars that drive on their own, and satellites that circle the planet, and machines that dig tunnels under cities. He runs more companies than I can count on both my hands, and believe me, I have tried. And he has done things that most people on Earth said were impossible, and then sat back and watched him do them anyway. Dave stopped. Tonight, he is going to sit behind a drum kit in front of 14,000 people and try to beat me. The crowd erupted. He is either the bravest man alive, Dave said, raising his voice just enough to be heard above the noise, or the most stubborn one. I suspect, knowing what I know about him, that those two things might be exactly the same thing. A beat. Now please welcome to the Hollywood Bowl, Elon Musk. The roar that rose from those 14,000 seats was enormous and complex and completely genuine. Part disbelief, part delight, part the particular electricity that only comes when something is about to happen that has never happened before. Elon Musk walked onto the stage from the left wing. He was wearing dark jeans and a plain gray t-shirt. No spectacle, no entrance music, no showmanship of any visible kind. And he walked the way he always walked in public, slightly forward-leaning, deliberate, the walk of a man whose mind is always slightly ahead of his body, and his body has learned to keep up. He crossed the stage to the second drum kit, which sat 10 feet to the left of Dave's, identical in every detail. He sat down. He picked up the sticks. He did not wave at the crowd. He did not acknowledge the noise surrounding him on all sides. And he looked across the 10 feet of stage between his kit and Dave's kit, and he found Dave's eyes, and he held them. Dave raised a single drumstick, slowly, deliberately, the way a person raises a glass before a toast, or a sword before a fight. Elon raised one drumstick back. The crowd fell silent so quickly, it was almost shocking, like a switch had been thrown. Then, the battle began. The format was straightforward. 3 rounds. Round 1. Each man plays a 1-minute freestyle, solo and uninterrupted. Round 2. They trade 8-bar sections back and forth for 5 minutes. Call and response. A musical conversation conducted entirely in rhythm. Round 3. Each man plays one final solo of their own choosing, for as long as they feel it needs to go. A panel of 3 judges, a professional session drummer, a musicologist from UCLA, and a music producer with 4 decades of experience, would score the first 2 rounds on points. But the final round, the solo round, and the one that would decide everything, would be decided by a single judge. One person, whose identity had been kept completely secret from the crowd, from the press, and from both men on the stage. That judge was sitting behind a black privacy curtain at the far left side of the stage, waiting. The crowd did not know who it was. Sophia did not know it was her. Elon played round 1 first. He settled himself, rolled his shoulders once, and began. What came out was not complicated. It was not decorated with fills or flourishes or any of the technical dressing that experienced drummers use to announce themselves. It was a driving, locked-in, 4-on-the-floor groove that started at a medium tempo and built carefully, deliberately, over the course of 60 seconds until it had doubled in intensity without once losing its footing. It was the drumming of someone who was not trying to impress anyone. It was the drumming of someone who had something to say and had chosen this as the way to say it. The sound technician backstage turned to his colleague with his eyebrows raised. His colleague shook her head slowly, in the specific way that means, I know. I didn't expect that either. Dave played round 1 second. he played the first movement of the conversation. Loud, fierce, relentless. The sound of something that refuses to be argued with. He played it like a thunderstorm that had decided to be precise. All that force, all that power, compressed into perfect structure. It was extraordinary. The judges gave round 1 to Dave, unanimously and without lengthy deliberation. Nobody in the crowd was surprised. The margin felt clear. But round 2 was where the night turned into something else entirely. Dave started it. 8 bars, clean and commanding, a rhythm that moved like a freight train through a straightaway. Powerful, inevitable, absolutely certain of where it was going. He ended it on a sharp crack of the snare that hung in the air above the crowd, like a question mark made of sound. Elon answered. His 8 bars were quieter, slower by a fraction. Where Dave had come at the exchange like something charging forward, Elon pulled the tempo back just enough to make the space between the beats feel deliberate rather than hesitant. And he answered the freight train not with another freight train, but with something that moved differently. Carefully, thoughtfully, the way a person answers a loud argument, not by shouting back, but by saying something so measured and direct that the room goes still. Dave's eyes moved across the stage to Elon's kit. He played again. 8 bars. But this time he pushed harder. A complex, syncopated pattern in bars 3 and 4 that shifted the accent in a way that was specifically designed to be difficult to answer cleanly. It was a test. A real one. The kind that only makes sense between 2 people who are genuinely paying attention to each other. The crowd heard it. Musicians in the audience leaned forward. The session drummer on the judging panel picked up his pen. Elon caught it. He did not replicate it. And he did not try to mirror back what Dave had thrown at him, which would have been the predictable move and would have sounded competent, but nothing more. Instead, he took the shifted accent and moved it 1 step further, pushed it somewhere unexpected, somewhere that changed the feel of the groove entirely. And then, in the final 2 bars of his answer, brought it all the way back home like a door swung open and then quietly, firmly closed. Dave Grohl stopped playing, not because the exchange was over, because he needed 1 single second to process what had just happened. It was less than a second. Most of the crowd did not catch it, but Priya Nair, sitting 3 seats down from Sophia in the front row, caught it. She had worked in the music industry long enough to know what it looked like when a musician was surprised by another musician. She had simply never expected to see it on Dave Grohl's face. The trading continued for 6 full minutes. Back and forth, back and forth. The crowd stopped cheering between exchanges and started simply listening, which is the highest thing an audience can give. Each 8 bars built on the last. Each answer shifted the conversation somewhere new. It stopped feeling like a competition somewhere around the 4-minute mark and started feeling like something rarer. 2 people genuinely communicating through the only language they had both chosen to bring into the room that night. When the final exchange ended, both men lifted their sticks at the same moment without coordinating it. A simultaneous pause, as natural as 2 people finishing a sentence at the same time. The Hollywood Bowl rose to its feet. All 14,000 people. At once. The sound of it went up and over the hills and out into the Los Angeles night like something being released. Sophia was standing with everyone else, her palms pressed hard against the stage in front of her, and feeling the vibration of 14,000 pairs of feet on the ground move through the wood and into her hands. Her eyes were bright and her cheeks were flushed, and her father's notebook was pressed against her chest, with both arms wrapped around it. The judges conferred. 2 minutes passed, then 3. The head judge leaned into her microphone. "Round 2, she said. is scored a tie. The crowd accepted this with the particular roar of people who had been hoping for exactly that answer. Which meant everything. The entire night. All of it. The months of training and the secrets and the promises made in quiet rooms years ago came down to the final solos. Elon would go first. He sat very still behind his kit after the announcement. The spotlight above him made a circle of light that he sat inside of like a man sitting inside a thought. His sticks rested across his knees. His eyes were focused on something in the middle distance that was not the crowd and not the stage, and not any visible thing at all. The particular focus of someone who is not preparing a performance, but retrieving something. The bowl went completely quiet. Sophia sat back down. She placed both palms flat on the stage in front of her. She closed her eyes. She was going to listen the only way she knew how, with every surface of her body that could feel. Elon began. He started with a single low roll on the bass drum, patient and slow and deep, like the first movement of something enormous deciding to wake up. It was so quiet that people in the back rows leaned forward without realizing they were doing it. The roll continued for 8 full bars at the same quiet, patient tempo. And just when the audience began to wonder where it was going, it began, almost imperceptibly at first, to grow. The tempo climbed, bar by bar, beat by beat. Like a tide coming in too gradually to watch, but impossible to ignore once you notice it. The bass roll opened into a full groove, and the groove grew arms, hi-hat patterns, snare accents, rim shots placed in gaps that kept appearing and closing like windows in a moving building. Layer by layer, the sound became more complex, more alive, more urgent, until the whole thing was moving at a pace that pressed against the chest from the inside. And then it kept climbing. 4 minutes into the solo, the Hollywood Bowl was completely inside the sound Elon Musk was making. Not listening to it. Inside it. There is a difference that only happens at certain moments in live music, when the barrier between the audience and the performance dissolves, and there is only the thing itself, surrounding everyone equally, belonging to everyone equally. Marcus Webb, sitting in the wings just off stage, had his elbows on his knees and his hands folded in front of his mouth. And he was watching his student. He was watching the thing he had seen the first glimpse of in that Austin studio 6 weeks ago. The lock, he called it, now fully open, fully inhabited, fully real. And then Elon did something Marcus had not taught him. With 30 seconds left, he began to slow down, not stumbling, not losing the thread. Deliberately, consciously, with complete control, he pulled the tempo back down through all the layers it had climbed, undoing them in reverse. Like a building being dismantled floor by floor until only the foundation remains. Back down to the low, patient bass roll. The same place he had started. He held it there for 4 bars. Then he stopped completely. 2 full seconds of silence. The kind of silence that is not empty, but full. Full of everything that just happened. Full of every person in the room holding the same breath at the same time. Then, one single hit. Right hand. Center snare. Clean and clear and final. The sound rang out across the open air of the Hollywood Bowl and climbed the hills and kept going. Into the dark California sky until it was gone. The silence that followed lasted 4 seconds. 4 full seconds, where 14,000 people did not make a single sound. Then, the bowl came completely apart. Sophia had tears running down both cheeks. She did not know exactly why. She only knew that the final hit, that single, a solitary crack of the snare, had traveled through the wood of the stage and through her palms and up her arms and landed directly in the place inside her chest where she kept her father. The place she did not usually let things reach. It had reached it. She pressed her father's notebook against her chest and held it there. Across the stage, Dave Grohl sat at his kit and looked at Elon Musk for a long, still moment. The crowd was still thundering around them, but between the two of them, there was a quiet that existed separately from the noise, the way the eye of a storm is separate from everything spinning around it. Something passed between them. Not words. Something older than words. Dave picked up his sticks. He played the first movement of The Conversation. Fierce and driving, exactly as he had written it. He played it the way only Dave Grohl can play, with the full force of someone who has spent his entire life converting feeling into rhythm and has never once lost the ability to tell the difference between the two. Then, the second movement. Slow, aching, honest. The room after someone has left it. He played it softer than he had ever played anything in public before, and the crowd, impossibly, went quieter to meet it. Then he reached the third movement, the blank page, the question mark. He paused on the threshold of it for just a moment, the briefest possible hesitation, invisible to almost everyone in the crowd. Then he knew. He played the third movement soft and high and clear, like light through a window in the early morning. Like an answer arriving after a long time of not knowing the question. Like something that had been held in two separate pairs of hands for 8 years, being finally, gently set down in the right place. It was the sound of a promise being kept. And when the last note dissolved into the air above the Hollywood Bowl, Dave set his drumsticks down. Not dropped them, set them down. With both hands, carefully and completely, the way you set down something that was never entirely yours to begin with. He looked at the black curtain at the side of the stage. It was time. The black curtain at the side of the stage began to move. It pulled back slowly, the way curtains do in theaters when what is behind them has been worth the wait. And standing there, in the full wash of the spotlight that swung to meet her, was a 9-year-old girl in a pale blue dress, sitting very straight in a chair that was slightly too large for her, her father's notebook held in both hands against her chest, her dark eyes moving calmly across 14,000 faces, all turning toward her at once. Sophia Castillo. For a moment, the crowd did not understand. Then the announcer's voice came over the system, and he explained. And he told them about Raymond Castillo, propulsion engineer, SpaceX employee, father, the kind of man who carried a worn notebook everywhere and had engine grease under his fingernails even when he was trying to look clean. He told them about a small community center on the east side of Houston in December of 2016, and a 2-year-old girl clapping her hands offbeat in the front row, and a promise made on an empty stage after everyone else had gone home. He told them about Elon Musk sitting on the floor of a Houston living room in the months after August 24, 2019, watching a 5-year-old girl arrange colored blocks by touch and saying quietly to her mother before he left, "Whatever she needs, whatever she ever needs." He told them about Priya Nair's fork stopping halfway to her mouth at a dinner in Los Angeles, and 2 phone calls made the following morning, and 1 tweet sent 4 days after that. See, he told them about the Sophia Castillo Fund, already established, already funded, already accepting applications from deaf and hard-of-hearing children across the country who wanted to study science, technology, engineering, and the arts. Named for the girl in the pale blue dress sitting in the chair at the side of the stage, who had not known any of this until this exact moment. Sophia sat completely still through all of it. Her face did not crumble. She did not look away. She listened with the whole-body stillness of someone receiving something so large that the only possible response is to hold yourself very quiet and let it arrive. When the announcer finished, she looked down at the notebook in her hands. Her father's handwriting was on the inside cover. She had read it so many times, she no longer needed to open it to see it. Feel everything, even the quiet parts. She looked up. She was given a single card and a pen. She wrote one name on it, so she held it up with both hands so the whole bowl could see. The card said, Elon. The reaction that moved through 14,000 people was not a single sound. It was several sounds arriving simultaneously. Disbelief and joy and something that had no clean name but lived in the chest, just below the throat. The feeling of watching something come full circle that you did not even know had been turning. Dave Grohl stood up from his kit. He walked across the stage with his drumsticks in his hand. He reached Elon and stopped in front of him. He extended his hand. Elon shook it. Then Dave pulled him into a hug. A real one. The kind that lasts long enough to mean something, long enough that the crowd grows a little quieter in the middle of it, as though everyone present understands instinctively that they are watching a private moment that has been made briefly public, and they want to give it the room it deserves. The night raised $4.2 million in ticket sales and donations. Within 72 hours, the Sophia Castillo Fund had received $6 million more from online donations sent by people in 41 different countries who had watched a live stream of the event or read about it the following morning. But that is not the part that stayed. What stayed happened after the crowd had gone, and the stage crew was quietly beginning to break down the equipment in the near dark of the empty bowl. Dave Grohl sat down in the front row beside Sophia. He reached into his back pocket and placed a pair of drumsticks in her hands. He wrapped her fingers around them gently, the way you hand something to someone and want to make sure they know they are allowed to keep it. He tapped a slow, simple beat on the armrest between them with one finger, and Sophia felt it. She placed the tip of one drumstick against the armrest. She answered him, not the same rhythm back, but her own version of it, her own shape, her own voice made of beat and pause, and the specific timing that belonged only to her. Dave listened to it. He smiled the way a person smiles when they hear something for the first time that they somehow already knew was there. "Your papa told me you could do that," he said quietly. Sophia looked at the empty stage in front of them, and at the drum kits still sitting under the dying stage lights, at the enormous curved shell of the bowl above them, holding the last of the night's sound inside it, the way a cupped hand holds water. "He always said music is just a conversation," she said. "You just have to find someone who speaks the same language." Dave nodded slowly. He looked at the drumsticks in her hands. "You speak it," he said. "You've always spoken it." Sophia ran her thumb along the length of one drumstick. She tucked both of them carefully inside her father's notebook, between the last page he had written on and the first page that was still blank, the pages she had not yet filled. She stood up. She carried them home. "Before you go, drop a comment below and tell me where in the world you are listening from right now. I read every single one, and it always amazes me how far these stories travel. And if this one moved you even a little, if it made you feel something you needed to feel today, hit that like button right now. It takes 1 second, and it helps more people find stories like this one. Every like is a small act of kindness that ripples further than you know. And if you are not subscribed yet, join this community by hitting subscribe. We are here to share stories that remind us what people are truly capable of. Stories about courage, about grief, about promises kept, and love that refuses to quit. That is what this channel is built on, and we are just getting started. Now click on the video appearing on your screen right now. The next story is already waiting for you, and I promise it is worth every second.